And it's time once again for Daily Distinction. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. A lot of folks signing on right now. We'll give them a second to get with us. And by the way, before we get started with our very, very special guest today, I want to say thank you for everybody that shares the show. And if you take just a moment to do that right now as we get started, I don't want anybody to miss what the great Phil Jones is going to be talking to us about here today. So if you would take a moment and share that, I would appreciate it, whether you're watching on Facebook, on any of the channels that we're on Facebook, whether you're watching live on Twitter or YouTube or live on Instagram. Please take a moment and share the show. Appreciate that. And by the way, thank you, everybody who wrote yesterday. Man, what a terrific time we had with Joe Bonsall yesterday. And I really, really appreciate that, that so many folks took the time to write how much they enjoyed yesterday's show. And Joe was great, already wrote and said, let's do it again. So we hope to have Joe Bonsall, the Oak Ridge Boys, back with us again sometime in the future. He and I were texting last night, and he just had a blast, and he got a lot of great messages too. So thanks to Joe for that. Let's talk about today and today's show. Brian, great to see you. Thank you for being here. Pam, as always, thank you for being here and sharing the show. And I this is one I have looked forward to, because the guy I'm going to introduce not only is a great, great friend, but I've got a lot of friends that are really, really smart. And I have a lot of friends who are insightful, who can see things and bring insight. But I don't think there's anybody like Phil Jones that matches just brilliance with an ability to have his finger on the pulse of what really matters and the insights that he brings. He's the author of incredible books. The cornerstone book is Exactly What to Say. We're going to be talking all about it, but without any further ado, I want to get him on here. And Phil, you win the prize for most distant guest.
Oh, fantastic. I feel like we've met and hung out in so many different corners of the world. Like, distance isn't really a thing in our friendship. So yes, I am in my cabin in the United Kingdom right now, and apologize for any interference I caused. I listened to you as the host about sharing, and I'm like, I can do that while Scott's talking. Then I realized it shouts out back at me with an echo.
The funny thing is, and the challenging thing is that if they're watching on Facebook or Twitter or YouTube, they get to see you, but because Instagram has that different format where it's portrait, they only get to see me and hear you. So I promise it's a much better show if you watch. So if I
lean this way, so I kind of
exactly. If you lean a little bit, that'll help, right? But well, Phil, I want to get into your books and all that, but I think a lot of folks would be interested in the perspective of you being in the United Kingdom as we deal with the challenges here. How have you found, from what you're hearing from your friends in the States, that the situation is different in the United Kingdom with the pandemic than it is here? What different approaches, different?
I think there is difference. We're seeing both the best and the worst of people. I think that's a consistency that we're seeing across the board. The biggest difference that I would say that exists is we have more of a united voice from a governmental point of view. So there is a set of recommendations and a set of guidelines and a thought process around what should be done, as opposed to a significant amount of difference that you see state to state and even like region or county to county through the US. And I see merits in both those things, but it is a very, very distinctive way of thinking, where there are a lot of people here like, we'll wait till they tell us, they tell us what we can do. And then you see differences in the US where it's like, hey, how do I figure out what I can do?
Right.
So that's probably the biggest difference, really, is that maybe respect for leadership is at a different level, or is challenged at a different level. But across the board, the majority of people care about like three things right now. They care about safety, they care about opportunity, and then they're looking to be able to say how in some way can I contribute.
Yeah.
How can I show up and contribute? And that contribution shows in different ways. But that's really what I'm seeing.
Well, Tammy and I have talked about you and Charlotte often in terms of, while this certainly wasn't planned, what a great opportunity for you in the early life of your twins to spend some quality time with them.
It is a gift, and one of the things that I continually talk to people about, like we can talk about the bad news, right? There's plenty of bad news, but there are a huge number of gifts in this crisis, and just because there's bad news doesn't mean we should ignore the gifts.
Right.
And for me, and we talked about this when we worked together in Australia, and I had this conflict of this giant big piece of business that was laid down that was going to occupy my summer. I was deciding that I would really like to be able to spend the summer in the UK, in my cabin, hanging out with my family. But there's this giant piece of business with a big major brand that is really too good to be able to pass up. And now I've got what I asked for because that business is no longer going ahead and I'm stuck in my cabin. Okay,
be careful what you want.
But I do get to wake up in my own bed. I do get to kiss my wife every day. I do get to see the micro moments with my young family that is growing up right now. And those gifts are abundant. And I get to be able to experience just different. And this is what fascinates me too, is like when people saying like, when's stuff going to get back to normal? In my mind, there was never a normal. There just was what was happening at that moment in time. I've seen so much craziness in my life there's no back to anything. There's only forward to next.
Yeah. I did a video the other day and I was thinking about you when I did it. I said, everybody's looking for the new normal, but the fact is that's an oxymoron. If it's new, it won't feel normal. And if it's normal, it can't be new. And there's not going to be a new normal.
No, I don't believe so either. I just think there's going to be next. And the most liberating thing that I get to be able to realize, and, I faced what happened through 2008. We talked long about that over a bourbon or two. And knowing what I experienced then and knowing what's happening now, what I realize is I get to shape what comes next.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I don't have to wait. I can in some way contribute what happens next, not just for me, but for hundreds or thousands of other people around me. If I'm brave enough to be able to say, what are the steps to be able to take right now? So I find that inspiring, challenging, daunting, nerve-wracking, all of those kind of things at the same time. But it's definitely a crazy time everywhere in the world. And it makes you think. Sure. And I enjoy thinking, so there's a gift in that too.
Yeah. That's as I mentioned when I was introing you, your combination of intelligence and insight, I think, is quite unique, and that's another reason I was really excited to talk with you today, just to kind of see what your insights are about business moving forward. Hey, let's take a second, real quick. I always like saying hi to the folks that are watching, and Ann is a regular viewer here, and the Blue Angels are flying over Indianapolis. That's really cool. Dean says, "Oh, great, Southern Indiana proud." That's my home area. Hey, to Kevin as well. Thanks, great to see you. Nyla, glad you're with us once again today. Phil, let's talk about business. What should business people be doing? When I get messages from the folks that are watching this every day. They're confused, they're scared, and they're wondering, should I be out there selling right now, or what approach should I be taking as I communicate with customers? So just generally, and then we'll get more specific in a minute. What's your general observations?
I got a lot of thought on this. Firstly, there is no should. Like, there is no should be doing anything. Everybody is in a different boat. Secondly, obviously, after I just gave it, firstly, there is no should. Secondly, there's a shouldn't. What we shouldn't do is try to sell somebody swimming lessons while they're drowning. And when somebody's drowning, if we have the ability to be able to help, we should throw them a rope, pull them safely to land, wrap a towel around them, and let them know that everything's going to be okay. And then we might be able to say, hey, next time you find yourself in that situation, then you might want to learn how to swim. So whatever your product or service is that can help people, make sure that you're timing it to the level where actually it is appropriate. It's not why they're in panic. if I look at the landscape of the business, and Scott, I've done something like 250 interviews with business leaders in the last 10 weeks, showed up in over 100 virtual presentations, is I've seen this recurring theme of people being in one of three positions again. They're either in what I would call hide mode, where they're like, no, nothing's going on, nothing's going to change, or I'm going to run to my cabin, or I'm going to bury my head in the sand for any of those things, and I'm going to hide from this thing. If they're not in hide mode, they are in what I would call survive mode, which is like, how can I do what I can do to be able to get by? What can I do to be able to get through to the end of the week, the end of the month, the end of the quarter, whatever it might be, because I'm just feeling the heat of what's happening right now. And if it's not survive mode, it's thrive mode. It's what they're saying is that there is some form of opportunity in the future, something I can do that allows me to be able to think or act differently and respond to my customers' needs, and I can carve out an opportunity. All three of those modes exist. Here's what also is interesting. All three of those modes exist in everybody I've spoken to.
Yes.
A dose of each of it.
Yes.
Not anybody's in one. And my viewpoint would be to say is try and craft your own cocktail out of those three ingredients for you to decide what's next. It's like we all need to take a little bit of a step back and say, is the business I was in the one that I want to grow into over the next decade? We all have to decide and say, well, what are the steps I need to take to make sure I can look after my people, I can pay my payroll, I can take care of my family, I can look after the basics, I can make sure the ends meet. We all have to think about survival. And we all have to think, so if this is true, what else is true? And that's the thrive part. If this is true, then what else is true? Like, I look at it from our point of view is I have no desire to be a virtual presenter. I have no desire to deliver virtual keynotes. However, I do understand that there are thousands of people currently working from home that are looking for inspiration, techniques, skills, and ability of being able to help overcome things. Can I learn to get good at something? Can I learn to like something that I previously have told myself that I wouldn't like in order to be able to serve a group of people that I care about? What would I advise businesses to do right now is to do what they've always done. And by which I mean have clarity over two things. Thing number one is who are the people you serve? Thing number two is what are the problems you solve for them? If you have clarity over those two things, you can reinvent with any necessary change in skill set, tactical platform, etc. But you have to have clarity over those two things. And then you can change, you can evolve, you can move the way in which you do those things.
You bet.
And I was talking to a restaurant owner locally in the town here where I'm at in the UK. He says, we've had to change so much. We've had to move to a delivery service and we've had to do this. And I said, you haven't changed a thing. Here are the people that you serve. Right. You serve the people of Marlow that are hungry.
Yeah.
What are the problems that you solve? Well, you look to get them food with an experience that is attached to it in the most convenient and ambient way. You're still doing the same thing you've always done.
Yeah. I want to follow up on that. A quick question for you that just came through on Instagram, so I can't post it up here, but it says, can checking in with customers and clients, just checking in, not trying to sell anything at this time, still be considered creating positive distinction?
My answer to this is not what you do, but how you do it.
Yeah.
Like, I could call 100 people tomorrow and say, hey, I'm just checking in, but the sincerity is not there. Also, when you say to somebody, I'm just checking in, you're putting an obligation on them to do the bulk of the work in the conversation. You're asking them to be able to fill in the lines. Yeah. And actually, it's quite an uncomfortable question, right? If I was to call you and say, hey, Scott, I'm just checking in, how are you? It is a big question. You could answer it to me because of our friendship and where we come back, and you'd give me some truth. But if I put that to somebody that I've done business with 2 or 3 times, hey, I'm just checking in, how are you? They're going to say, yeah, I'm fine. You know, things are good, yada, yada, yada. Doesn't show that I care. If, though, however, I ask a different question, if I show up and I say, hey, I was thinking of you today.
Yeah.
How are you holding up? What's changed with you since insert last time we spoke, last time we met, last time we transacted? And I let them fill in those blanks.
Yeah.
Firstly, it's easier for them to be able to fill in those blanks. Secondly, it shows a level of sincerity that is significantly higher. And then thirdly, it could deliver a level of distinction because you've hit the show me you know me button.
Right.
You've shown that you care as opposed to said that you care or acted that you cared.
Yeah, I think I think it's important to reach out and make contact in this period.
Yeah, without question.
Right. But I think saying that you're just checking in, it also puts a pressure on the responder in the sense that if everything's going great, I feel guilty because I know how many people are challenging and suffering right now. Yet at the same time, if things are going really poorly, maybe that's not something I want to share either. So it's hard for the respondent to win. You don't want to, not that you're playing win-win, but it's hard for the respondent to feel good about the response unless, hanging in there or some kind of generic, meaningless.
The context is multifaceted, right? If I look at my world, my in-person speaking business is devastated.
Yep.
My online virtual business has had growth. My ebook and audiobook business is gangbuster. My print book business is having significant challenges. My digital agency has required a huge amount of additional effort and attention, and we've had staff challenges and obstacles that are in that. My personal life is both brilliant and more challenging than it's ever been ever, right? There's complexities to an answer to any of these questions.
Yeah.
So if you're going to show up to somebody and you're going to ask them how they're doing, you best give a damn to deal with the complexities that could come out in the other direction, because they're not mono. They're like three-dimensional, full HD. And if you care about the whole picture, then care about the whole picture. If you don't, then show up in your lane.
Yeah.
Show up and be like, hey, one thing that's really important for us right now is to make sure that everybody we do business with has knowledge and transparency of all the services that we can provide right now so that you're aware of how we can help you in your times of need. So we can show up and speak to people without having to say, I'm just checking in.
Yeah.
And I was sharing that with a company the other day, is that you should be reaching out to your customers and let them know that one of the things that many of our customers don't know that we do, but we do, is we have virtual appointment settings, and you don't need to travel in to come and see us. And we can communicate with you via virtual platforms, and we can fulfill you from afar. In fact, we could set up a recurring scheduled order for you without you needing to come across. Like, that would be a virtual check-in that was purposeful within lane and didn't need to let the reins out.
I like Kevin saying here, I keep asking, can I continue to provide value outside my preference, comfort zone, or what's best for me? Yeah, that's what we're doing. How do I continue to provide value? Phil, what you were saying kind of takes me back. Yesterday, we had one of my friends who was a member of the classic singing group, the Oak Ridge Boys, Country Music Hall of Fame. We had a great time yesterday, but off air, we were talking about, their business isn't what they thought it was, in that they were thinking concerts are their business, but in fact, it's the content, it's the song, and the song will drive radio airplay, will drive people buying merchandise, will buy people buying concert tickets, by streaming. Exactly. And so the content is, and we're just finding different delivery mechanisms for the content, maybe not the ones we prefer, right? But different mechanisms. Oh, here's a viewer that wanted to make sure that she said hello to you, by the way. I don't know if you can see it or not when I pop these quotes up, but Tammy, Tammy said hello. Phil's kind of frozen here for a second. So I want to, until we get Phil back, because Phil, we got this great expression on your face right now. So I'll do that. There we go. Now you're back. Yeah, you're kind of there.
So I saw Tammy and I got excited and I got a little animated, and it broke all of the technology.
There you go. She has that effect on me too. So
yeah, I'm with you on the whole content piece is, and it's not even the content, right? The Oak Ridge Boys are right that it is the songs. It's not the songs. It's how the songs make people feel, and then what people go on to do as a result of what that feeling is. And that's the same as our books, or the work that you do on stage, or even signature stories like what you've done with Taxi Terry. Is it doesn't finish with your ability to convey the great story. It finishes with somebody else being able to take that story, reinterpret it for themselves, and then go on and create their own version of that in their own world and then repeat it.
Well, as you
And
and I
great,
have talked,
great.
the key to I'm sorry, I was going to say, as you and I have talked, the key to the good story and the stories that you tell, it is not that the listener sees you or I in the situation. It's the story is constructed and told in a manner that they see themselves.
That's
there.
it.
You know, I mean, that's when something has traction and resonance with them.
We're in the business of empowering other people to go on and do great things, and then you achieve greatness through that. And that is what your distinction message is all about. And you know, the same with the iconic brands that you've shared about in the past is they've enabled other people to do great things and then being iconic as a result.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like it's a
the result. Yes, exactly. Not yeah. And Phil, I don't know anybody that has helped more people than you in terms of how they communicate. And good grief, just the results that people talk about in terms of just the power of language. And I'm curious for those who may not be familiar with you or your books, how did you get so interested in the precision of language that can make such a compelling difference?
Yeah, it's a thoughtful question to be able to pick up. I found myself in senior leadership positions at a very early age. So 18, 19, 20, 21, I was a senior sales manager with a large department store retail group in the UK. Then through the remainder of my early 20s, I was a senior store manager, sales trainer, and then supporting business growth of people where the majority of them were double my age. And the ability to gain respect in those scenarios is really challenging. And at that time in my life, certainly the earlier parts of it, I was what many people would describe as a cocky little shit. Like I thought I was better than what I was, and that was both a blessing and a curse. But what I learned with some humbleness is that if I was to convey skills to people, the easiest way for me to be able to do it was not for me to say what I think you should do is. The easiest way for me to convey a change in behavior to somebody else is I was watching Steve. And the way that Steve navigates these complex conversations is Steve says this and does that and then acts in that way. And his results are significantly different to yours. So I'm wondering if you should be more like Steve, right? Was a technique that I started to be able to develop as a management style. And I would lead people through observations from others. What it meant was I would continually observe others to a level that was bordering on maybe even like, it was irrational levels of me following other people's behavior. And then the more I studied what other people would do, particularly those that were crushing it, is I started to learn that the difference wasn't just hard work and endeavor and good product knowledge and all the things that we preach to be important. There was this other category that was knowing exactly what to say, when to say it, and how to make it count. It was the ability to be able to steer conversations. And then through decades of training dozens of different industries, I'd start to see the same behavior recurring. Nobody would know what they were doing, and nobody would be able to pinpoint the words or the precise pieces of language that would show up in all of these, but I started to see patterns. And this, for me, when I have a mathematical and an analytical brain, but with a very strong, like, human emotive heart, was like, oh, I can do story math on this stuff. I can understand how to be able to calculate what it takes to get somebody to a point where they say this makes sense and this feels right in the decision making, purely by steering a conversation through words.
Yeah.
And then when I look at my books and the work through particularly exactly what to say, I learned something fascinating is that people are really good at buying books. They're just not so good at reading them. So if I could write the biggest little book known to man, something that's full of huge ideas that could be consumed in an hour, a flight, a train ride, a drive, then what would happen is people might consume it, they might use the contents, they might put it into practice, they might achieve results, and then they might tell other people. And that's really been my whole mantra behind how do we preach this message of exactly what to say, is say, how do we take complicated things and turn them into simple? Not how do I take simple things and try to make myself sound smart? How do I simplify the complex?
That's a huge distinction between those two. That is huge. And I'll just say, and I've told you this personally. I mean, just I don't want to say they're minor because they get major results, but the the tweak of just saying something like, if you're like most people, which is one of my favorite ones that you talk about.
These are profound changes. Like take that one sequence of words, right? Is we've all been in countless situations where we've had somebody on the fence. They're looking to make a decision. They're struggling to make a decision. Let's just appreciate that fact for a second. They're struggling to make a decision. They're not trying to say no. They're just not sure what to do. They are picture perfect definition of indecisive. We know that moment. And they could turn left or they could turn right, which means we have the power to influence the decision at that moment. We've been there with our spouses, this restaurant or this restaurant, this vacation or this vacation, this hotel or this hotel. Let's understand that both those choices are good choices half the time. It's not what's the right one and what's the wrong one. They're two knife-edge decisions. Our ability to steer two versions of right towards the one in our favor is a skill that we should all look to be able to master. In each one of those scenarios, people want to be told what to do without feeling like they've been told what to do.
Yeah.
Because they want to know what to do, but they don't want to feel like they've been told what to do.
Yeah.
Because people like to be led, but they don't like to feel like they are following.
Ooh.
What a riddle, right? Let's also take another piece of psychology in and say, and I'll finish this and then you can unpack it because there's a lot.
Yeah.
Is people find great confidence in the fact that people like them have done a thing before them. Yeah. Whether that is a group of friends sat on a rock face and they're looking to be able to jump into the lagoon below. Nobody wants to go first. Kid goes first, says he has a great time, jumps off, splashes in the water, doesn't die. Everybody else now thinks it's a good idea. What we like to be able to do is to follow other people's actions. None of us want to go first, but we want to be perceived as the leader. So when we think about that whole piece and we take the riddle of the fact that people take safety in numbers, they like the confidence that other people have acted in a certain way before them. They like to be led, but they don't want to feel like they are following. They want to know what to do, but they don't want to be told what to do. Then all I do is I reach for a simple set of magic words and I say, here's what most people would do. And when I say, here's what most people would do, little voice goes off in head and says, I'm most people. So if that's what most people would do, then I should do that too. And there's no way you could convince me otherwise. Right? It's just simple triggers that is backed on a load of persuasive science, a load of human psychology that is brought together in one very precise example.
I love that. And I want to unpack that given our current situation, not being political, but just kind of in our current situation. But before I do that, I'm going to give away a copy of one of your books, and all they need to do, we'll put the names in a hat, draw it, announce the winner tomorrow. But if you'll just type Phil in the comments, if you'd like to get a free copy of exactly what to say, exactly how to sell, exactly where to start, you'll get one of your choice of those. We'll put the names in a hat. All you got to do is just type Phil in the comments, and we will go from there. We'll.
And Scott, I'll do a copy and I'll sign it from England and I'll ship it as well.
You're kidding. I was going to do
like a picture of the Queen's face in the corner and all those things.
That's even better. All right. Well, holy cow! We're gonna have a bunch of names to put in the hat. We are. So all you need to do is just type Phil in there, and we'll put your name in the hat and draw it out. And that's very kind, Phil. I was just gonna send it from here. So.
I will send one from across the pond. It'll have like a different level of sentiment to it.
That is, see, now we've got Phil times a million. That's a trillion, right? I don't know. Let me catch up here on a couple of comments because I don't. Yeah, exactly. Kevin's making a great point that even when they say tell me what to do, they don't want to be told what to do. And I'm wondering if that might be part of our challenge here in the States with what's going on right now, is that people are feeling told and not led.
Sure.
Right? I mean, you're going to stay in, you're going to do this, you know, and I steer away from the political stuff here, and I'm not trying to, corner you into that, but I think that's part of, in different states. For example, Here, the governor of Kentucky is getting really, really high marks, even though he's been one of the more demanding ones about people staying in, simply because of the way it's presented. He's taking the same message and presenting it and getting better reviews than other governors who are presenting that same message, which, to your point, is exactly what you're saying. Pardon the pun.
You're welcome. That's a book you owe me. The royalty.
Oh my God. Holy cow. I mean, you just can't believe. Hey, there's Pam. I haven't talked to Pam for a while. Hibda is there. Darcy, Randall, Brian, we showed earlier. Oh, great, Pam. Glad you're enjoying it. Shelly says, I might be disqualified. Yes, you are, Shelly. You're my sister. You are disqualified.
You can have a book anytime.
Hey, here's the best review I've ever gotten. Ron Dottie says, you guys are better than Ozark and Tiger King put together. That's the greatest comment of all time there, Ron. Thank you very much. Hey, Phil, we're just about out of time, and I appreciate you spending the time with us giving up your evening over there in the UK. Any last insights you'd like to share for helping people in terms of how they communicate and how they get through and just insights that might help us in this challenging time?
I'm going to try and give as much information in the shortest period of time as I can right now. And I'm going to give 3 rules that I think every conversation needs to have during these challenging times. And when I say during these challenging times, what I really mean is all times, because all times are actually challenging. And every conversation that you enter into needs these 3 ingredients. The first ingredient is curiosity. If you want to create certainty in a conversation, you cannot show up with certainty. You need to show up with curiosity. When you show up with curiosity, the other person may find certainty. After curiosity, the other ingredient you need is empathy. What empathy is caring about what the people you care about care about. Now, that is a beautiful quote. It is not mine. It belongs to John Acuff. And I think it is the best definition of empathy. We all want to show up in a conversation and tell people that we're right. But if we fail to see it through their lens and see it from their point of view, then we got a huge miss. And I'm going to give a very quick, interesting example on that. Is my best friend on the planet is from Kentucky. And he was the best man at my wedding. And we have very strongly opposing views on a number of things. We've touched on political things. A simple belief that we have is that I think that less people should have guns, and he thinks that people should have guns, right? Let's just keep it in that very simple line. The interesting thing is, though, when we show it with empathy, is he thinks that people should have guns because he wants to keep his family safe. I think that people shouldn't have guns because I want to keep my family safe. What do we find? We find the level ground that says we can have a meaningful discussion about this because we both care about keeping our families safe.
Yes.
And that then becomes a very interesting debate that we can step into. And guess what? We start to be able to blend the lines a little, and we start to be able to learn from each other. And that's what empathy delivers us. Behind empathy, the third ingredient we need to have is courage. And by courage, I don't necessarily mean we go to war with a bayonet courage, we climbed a mountain, we jumped out of an aeroplane courage. I mean the courage to ask people the questions they're not prepared to ask themselves, but they've been asking in their sleep. The courage that we need to be able to ask one more question, hang into a conversation a little bit more. The courage to be able to pick up the phone to our customers before they cancel or change or agree terms to say, what do we need to do to be able to work this out and go the distance? The courage we need to have to be able to talk towards our families and say that things might need to change because things have changed. Because if you can have the courage to do the work before the work and have the conversations before they become critical, you then don't have to deal with the triage that comes afterwards. So that's what I'd invite everybody to bring towards every conversation they're having right now. Show up with curiosity because you know nothing. You just have strong opinions and strong experience. And your curiosity will help somebody else find certainty. Empathy says, I'm going to do the work to see it through your eyes before I consider my lens. Courage says I'm prepared to ask the questions and approach the conversations that most people are going to hide away. You do that in every area of your life right now. The irony is, in these challenging times, you'll come out stronger.
Fantastic. That's amazing. There's nothing I can add to that. There's nothing I can say. That's as good as it gets right there. That's you don't try to add anything when the guy knows exactly what to say. Right? Phil, I can't tell you what a pleasure it has been. It is really terrific. I'm going to sign off the cast. Hang on here for just a second, if you would, please, and we'll chat. But I want to thank everybody for watching. And Phil, we've had a bunch of folks on here today, so you have kept their attention. You've drawn them in and kept their attention, and that's in this virtual time. That's a heck of an accomplishment. So thank you so much for that. I really appreciate it.
My absolute pleasure and privilege. Thank you, sir.
Thanks to Phil Jones for joining us today. It's been great to be with Phil, and I'll be right back here. By the way, you see his books right there, right over my shoulder. So go to Amazon and look for Phil M. Jones. And you can get any of the books that he has. They are absolutely. And by the way, he's one of the best-selling authors on Audible, and it's a great way. He's got Persuade and Get Paid is one of the best things you'll ever hear. So check him out on Audible as well. And if you're not an Audible subscriber, subscribe because of Phil, because it's worth doing. So that's all for today. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow, same time, everything right here on Daily Distinction.